Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhury. Thank you for watching Inquiry. While COVID numbers spike, I'd like to draw attention this week to another deadly virus around us, the virus of polarization and hate. Several court judgments have drawn attention to this over the last couple of weeks. Last week, a Mumbai High Court judgment exonerated the Tablighi Jamaat and criticized the media and government for making scapegoats of them and blaming them for Corona Jihad. Another Delhi High Court ruling gave bail to Devanga Kalita, an anti-CA protester, and said that the Delhi police had provided no evidence to show that she had instigated the Delhi riots. And this week, a Supreme Court judgment came down heavily on Sudarshan TV for a program where its anchor tried to warn India about the infiltration of Muslims, as he called it, into the civil services, something that the program was calling UPSC Jihad. Even as we speak, students, activists, and academics are being arrested under the UAPA, an anti-terror law, while those who shouted Goli Maro Saloko have no FIRs against them. The Delhi police claims that there's no selective justice or policing taking place, and both Hindus and Muslims are being arrested for the riots. We'll have to wait for the judiciary to sift through the rights and wrongs of that. But at Inquiry, we'd like to open up space to examine the propaganda, the grouses, and the prejudices that are leading to this atmosphere of polarization and trust deficit. Some weeks ago, I spoke to Nishikant Dubey, a BJP MP, about hate speech and the BJP's Muslim agenda. I also spoke to Asaduddin Owaisi, the chief of the Muslim party AIMIM, about how Indian Muslims are feeling in this time of division and hate, why they're feeling victimized and targeted, and on the flip side, if there are aspects of the community that needs to introspect and change as well. I'm delighted to have Asaduddin Owaisi join me for this crucial conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
So Owaisi Sahab, as I said, you identify as a staunch nationalist, and your speeches in Parliament are some of the sharpest of your generation. But you've been saying for a while that India is in danger of being completely communalized. Now, for those who don't believe that and who think that it's an exaggeration, who don't feel that Muslims are being targeted and attacked, what is the evidence that you can point to?
Since BJP came into power in 2014, we have seen it started with Love Jihad, which again, it turned out to be completely false. Then it started with Ghar Wapsi, all those RSS people saying that we'll give you so much of money, return back again. It turned out to be another vicious program of BJP. Then the main lynching started in the name of cow. And how, what better example that one can give very sadly is how a union minister went and then laid a wreath on a dead body of an accused of akhlaq. Another sad example of Jain Sinha garlanding the convicted killers of a person who was killed in Jharkhand. So these are all classic examples of what had happened, and now later on it followed by the CAA, NPR, NRC protest, and then followed by the program of Delhi. And still we see now when the country is in pandemic, still the right-wing media who always says whatever the government wants, the targeting of Tablighi Jamaat, it was nothing but targeting of Muslims and Islam, that showing those false videos of how Muslims were spitting inside of food, which was proven to be wrong. Muslims misbehaving with nurses in hospital, again it proved to be wrong. But the whole idea is to create an atmosphere wherein Muslims are made to feel as second-class citizens, and at the same time to send a message to the majority community that we have a threat from these minority Muslim communities.
So, Owaisi Sahab, in the immediate context, there have been a spate of arrests of the young, particularly women protesters, who participated in the anti-CAA protests. And there's been a lot of concern that these are selective arrests because Kapil Mishra or Parvez Verma or, even Anurag Thakur, who had said incendiary things, that there are no FIRs against them. But the Delhi police has come out to say that there are 1,300 arrests, and that if anyone goes through those arrests, they will be able to show that, it's fairly equivalent between the two communities. Have you looked into the matter? Do you have an evidence-based sense of what is going wrong?
I'm not demanding that more Hindus should be arrested or lesser Muslims should be arrested. Our main demand is whoever is responsible, please arrest them. That has not been the case. You have all these FIRs which have been made and the charge sheets that have been filed in the court. I mean, they talk about incidents from December onwards, but they don't talk about the incendiary speech made on February 23rd by ex-MLA who's now in BJP. You don't talk about that. You don't talk about the speech that has been made by Anurag Thakur in the Delhi Assembly elections. And then you don't, the FIR and the charge sheet don't talk about the killings of Faizan. So, there's this selective arrest of whether it's Safura, Ishrat Jahan, and other Khalid Saifi. It points to this whole conspiracy that these riots were not spontaneous. The BJP wants to send a message that it was a conspiracy hatched by Muslims, and that is why bail given by the police. Then suddenly next day you re-arrest them under more graver charges and then under UAPA. So this is nothing but BJP is hell-bent on projecting, to protect the main conspirators, whether it is Mr. Kapil Mishra, whether it is Anurag Thakur, where all these speeches were made. So one cannot deny that. And also BJP makes an argument that Muslim women needs to be protected. But here was this protest. This was completely an organic protest against CAA, NPR, and RC, which was led by young Muslim men and women who had, till that legislation, had no connection to politics. These were the people who came out, started protesting. So BJP, first they said these are misguided people, and then suddenly they started saying, oh, it's a communal program, and then this whole riot issue was completely planned, and that is why we see that these arrests which are being made. So it is wrong to say that, oh, we have equal number of Hindus, equal number of Muslims. Whoever is responsible, but the main responsibility starts from February 23rd, when Mr. Kapil Mishra made that famous incendiary hate speech, and there is no mention about that.
So Owaisi, you've spoken about Safura Zagar and some of the other Pinjarathor activists who were arrested and given bail, and then the very next day they were arrested on even more severe charges, murder charges and others, and yet the conspiracy that they were accused of was just of blocking a road. And it's problematic that many of these FIRs are not in public, so one can't really examine them. But for the time being, I'd like to shift to some of the more underlying issues, as I said. Let's take the CA and NRC. And here, I would like to transparently state that I'm one of those who finds these laws very disturbing and problematic. But there are many others who are genuinely confused about how this pertains to Indian Muslims and how it was targeting Indian Muslims. So can you explain that perspective? And also, if it wasn't this government who was putting it out, would it have generated the same fear and anxiety? So is one's opposition to it in principle, or is it because one does not trust the agenda of the BJP government?
Definitely, because the legislation itself is unconstitutional, and the apprehensions and fear of being made stateless, especially among the Muslims and then the Dalits and the Adivasis, would have happened. It's not a question of whether if an ex-government was there instead of a government headed by Mr. Modi. Definitely the same protest would have happened. Let me give you an example of Assam. Assam, after the Supreme Court mandated exercise that was done, you have 1.9 million people whose names have not come in the National Register of Citizens. Now, over there, the BJP says that we will give citizenship to everyone apart from Muslims. How is that possible? How can you make Muslims of Assam who have lived here for years and years? Why? Because they happen to follow religion of Islam. The others would be given protection under the CAA. The remaining Muslims would have to go to the Foreigners Tribunal and fight their cases. That is a classic example of what BJP has done. And I feel that even Congress also has to take blame because of these rules, this act which were made.
So, actually, again, the sad part is that nobody really argues with facts in the public domain, because it's very interesting. The CAA, the beneficiaries of the CAA were only about 31,000 people. The IB had published a report in the parliamentary committee, which said that it was 24,000 Hindus. There was 5,807 Sikhs. There were 55 Christians, 2 Parsis and 2 Buddhists, who have actually been waiting for citizenship. So just to address 31,000 people's claim on citizenship, the government could actually have done that, fast-tracked it with an administrative measure. It didn't need a law which excluded Muslims in any way. So again, one needs to make those arguments, I think, in an evidence-based way rather than with broad strokes where people lose the facts of the matter.
I partially disagree with you. Why? Because the whole idea of bringing in CAA followed by NPR and NRC was to ensure that in the name of Bangladeshis, majority of Muslims should be made stateless throughout India. And that is what BJP's whole political program is, that come 2024, this will be the main issue when they have CAA followed by NPR and NRC, because you follow the speeches of Amit Shah. Consistently he has been saying whenever he goes to West Bengal that we will not allow Guspeti. Who is a Guspeti? Everyone who has a Muslim name is a Guspeti. The same thing was mentioned by Mr. Modi in the parliament election campaign. So I feel that this is done deliberately by BJP to ensure that, in the name of Bangladeshis, in the name of people coming and living illegal over here, they want to ensure that Muslims are made stateless in India. And no better way of doing it through NPR and NRC followed by CAA.
So just to clarify the issue, Owaisi Saab, let me ask you that if this was divorced from the political rhetoric of the BJP, for instance, would you accept that with the concentrated influx of immigrants into the border states of, say, Bihar and Bengal, is there any legitimacy to the local community's fear of a demographic change? In the Northeast, it just so happens that it's Muslims, but actually the anxiety is more an ethnic one than a religious one. So do those fears and sentiments have any legitimacy at all?
I am of the opinion that anyone who's not an Indian should not be allowed to stay in India. And when I say that should not be allowed to stay in India, is that you follow whatever the law says. But you cannot target a community. That is what BJP is doing. Yes, at the same time, the question that needs to be asked is how many people have been deported so far in the last 5 years? The number is only 25. That is the answer that was given in the parliament. Definitely, I am for protecting all the legal safeguards that the Constitution of India has given to all the tribals, all the Northeast states. But the main issue is that the BJP is not worried in protecting those constitutional safeguards or guarantees that are given. The BJP has definitely passed CAA to use it as a means of ensuring that Muslims should be checked, a domicile sword should always be hanging on their head. And I come back again and give the example of Assam. If a Supreme Court monitored national register citizenship came into existence, till the final list came out, the BJP was happy because they were expecting that more than 5 million or 7 million Muslims would be in that list. But it completely went against their plan when only 500,000 Muslims with names are included. So that is why a needle of, not in suspicion, but my apprehensions arise because of what BJP is doing in Assam, and also in the light of statements that has been coming from BJP leaders in Bengal. The BJP chief in Assam said that we'll throw out so many Muslims, we'll use NPR, and then all this rhetoric on social media against Muslims. I'll give you a classic example. There was a communal riot in Telangana in a place called Bhaisa in the month of February. The videos are there on YouTube wherein the Sangh Parivar buffoons are shouting कि NPR आने वाला है, NRC आएगा, तुमको कागज दिखाना पड़ेगा, तुमको बाहर फेंक देंगे. What are all these? So this is what BJP has been using. Definitely, I agree with you. Those safeguards should be followed. Those ethnicity, which is very important for our country, has to be protected. But then again, the larger design of BJP is completely different.
So let me get this right, Owaisi Saab. You're saying that if it was a better crafted, better intentioned and localized attempt to stop immigrants coming into Bihar and Bengal, that you would see some validity to that exercise. That it's the BJP's polarizing rhetoric and the promise of holding this NRC as a nationwide exercise that makes it so problematic. Am I correct?
Madam, you see, we have the border security force, we have customs and immigrations. Are they not doing their work? Let us assume, for argument's sake, that people are entering from the neighboring countries. What is BSF doing? What is the immigration people are doing? Who's stopping them from arresting these people, or what is happening? But that is not the case. The case is completely different. I will go to the extent of saying, if you want to give citizenship to Hindus coming from Pakistan, please do it. You want to give it to Hindus coming from Bangladesh, give it. But please don't give it on the name of religion, because that goes contrary to the constitution. BJP is hell-bent on destroying the basic structure of the constitution. This whole CAA goes against the basic structure of the constitution. That is why we oppose it, because it violates the right to equality, it violates many principles, many fundamental rights of the constitution. Coming back to Assam, how can one justify the non-inclusion of names of family members of the late President of India, Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad? How can you justify the non-inclusion of name of Sanaullah, who happened to be part of Indian Army and served at Siachen Glacier? There are so many examples, and then these people are proving with documents. You have Taimura, Madam Taimura, who was the first woman chief minister. Her name was not included. How can you justify all these things? And that is why I feel that we have to learn lessons from Assam. What if this is replicated throughout the country? Can you imagine, let us assume that you have 2 crores, 3 crores people names not being included in, if God forbid, if you have an RC in India, what will happen? They will lead to so many social problems. It might help politically BJP in creating more divisions. What will be the cost which each everyone have to pay for it? Not only that, but Himanta Biswa Sharma, the Deputy CM of Assam, says that we will redo NRC in Assam. I mean, what is that? And then you talk about detention centers. Now, I have the many classic examples wherein people are now being put in detention center. To which country you should speak to? There are many people who are lying over there. I mean, if you take a foreigner and put him in detention center, he's allowed to speak to his embassy. What about these Muslims in Assam who are now lying in those detention centers? And very surprisingly and shockingly, Supreme Court says, okay, if you have been in that place for 3 years, you're out on bail. Why should I be in 3 years also? What is that, this whole argument of 3 years? Why should I suffer for 3 years? What I see in Assam, I shudder to think what will happen if it is done in other parts of India. That what really makes me very apprehensive, and rightfully, that is why you have these, in this protest, you have all these young Muslim boys and girls who were never part of any political activism or party. They felt this fear. They felt that we have to protect India also, protect the constitution. And that is why you feel that these new voices came out and protested. Unfortunately, now many of them are being put in prison under the draconian act of UAPA.
To shift to another contentious issue, Owaisi Saab, can you spell out what exactly is disturbing about the arrests that have taken place? Because as I mentioned earlier, the Delhi police keeps asserting that they have arrested an equal number of Hindus and Muslims, and there is no selective policing or justice taking place.
The disturbing thing is that before the CAA protest started, you had this triple talaq bill coming up. At that point of time, day in, day out, the Muslims were being hammered with this point that, oh no, the Muslim woman needs to be protected. And who will protect the Muslim woman? It is Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi said that, "Main aapka bhai, I am your brother." But when the CAA protest started happening, it is the Muslim woman who came out in the forefront. And at that point, I feel, I'm of the opinion that BJP was completely exposed, and they were really embarrassed to the core that they just didn't know how to react, because it is the Muslim woman who came out and started protesting. Now, the whole protest was not a communal protest. It was to save the constitution and to ensure that what happened in Assam is not replicated. BJP was confused. So now the Delhi riots, which I still feel were well planned by the BJP and by the Sangh Parivar in every way. But the arrest of Safura, Gulfisha, Ishrat Jahan. So this is a selective arrest, and believe me, all these charge sheets which are being made, they will be exposed badly in court. But the cost would be under UAPA, you languish in jail for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and your life, your prime youth is destroyed. Take the example of Pune police. When the Pune police said that a conspiracy was hatched in Bhime Koregaon to assassinate the Prime Minister. But when I got those documents from a friend of mine, there is no mention of the assassination of Prime Minister. What you see is that these people are being languished in jail, and even the exoneration rate in UAP is more than 70%. So arresting of these young Muslim boys and girls is definitely completely wrong, and the targeting of these educated youth, these are the future of not only the country but also of a community. So by targeting them, you are sending a message that you should not do protest. Believe me, this is not good. This is not healthy for our democracy. This will make people who want Muslims to become extremists, because that is why you see one person of a Muslim person who was being hit by sticks, who was falling on the ground. Immediately what we see after 10 days, that Al-Qaeda in their online magazine had a cover story of that Muslim. Now, that is the message that is coming out. You require more democratic voices. In fact, we should encourage these Muslim youths, especially the Muslim women, to come out, and ensure that the constitutional guarantees which are given to them, you should protest, because unless and until you protest, activism is done. How will democracy prosper? How will the Muslim voice be heard? And unfortunately, by arresting of all these young boys and girls, it is not good for a democracy. This will lead to, unfortunately, I'm using this word, radicalization, extremism. And people who want us to be radical extremism must be really happy. But what makes me sad is that, unlike whites who have stood up with the blacks in US, they are the majority community who have stood up, who are questioning the government of the day, who have gone to the White House and protested. Every place in US protested. But where are those secular, liberal Hindu voices who came out on streets for Faizan? Take George Floyd, the same video, Faizan, same video, wherein Faizan is lying on the ground having been shot by the Delhi police. His whole jaw is fractured, but you don't find any protest. That is what makes me upset. That is what makes me, in fact, very upset and angry also. That when I see George Floyd, you find majority of whites of US coming out and protesting and making it an issue. And here, the death of Faizan is being unanswered. Even not a single police officer has been arrested. Not a single inquiry is being ordered. In the case of arrest of all these young boys and girls, there is no voice. There is complete silence, radio silence by all so-called secular parties, whether it's that of Faizan or arrest of Safura, other young boys.
So, Owaisi Saab, it's good you mentioned the other secular parties. Where do you think things have gone that wrong? So, when you talk of the secular parties, or the reason why people find it so hard to even align with the idea of secularism today, where do you think things went wrong? And if you were to introspect, were there any aspects of the way Muslim leaders positioned the Muslim community where also things went wrong?
I have said this many times, I'll again say it on record. The Muslims will have to take the responsibility in this whole communalism which has come to the fore. My responsibility is to the extent of wherein I blindly believed all these secular parties. I blindly believed them. They told me, please don't come on the forefront, because the moment you come on the forefront, it will help the Hindutva and the BJP communal forces. I said, okay, I agree with you. I will just be an innocent bystander. So what has happened by Muslims wrongly believing in this facade of these so-called secular parties, you find a marginalization which has taken place. Why is it like, another example I can give you. Now you have in Maharashtra, Shiv Sena, Congress, NCP is in power. Khaja Yunus, this boy was killed in police custody, was shot. His body was not found. There were some police officers who were suspended. You know what happens now? This same so-called Congress NCP who claim to be the paragon of virtues and carriers of secularism, they reinstate those police officers. Now, what is it that I have to face to go and tell Khaja Yunus family. Thirdly, this whole CAA, NPR protest and then subsequent program of Delhi has also sent out a message to Muslims, please wake up. Wake up from your deep slumber sleep or wherein you have always been supporting these Congress parties or AAP or RJD or Samajwadi party. Muslims voted wholeheartedly for Kejriwal. Where was his chief minister? I understand law and order is not his subject. But this man, instead of going to those localities where communal tension was there, as the chief minister, had he gone over there to Hindu localities, to Muslim localities, definitely, the scale of violence would have come down. But no, this so-called secular man was sitting at Rajghat. He was sitting in silence. Congress party was not there. And RJD youth leader was arrested from Jamia. RJD is quiet. And so what is the message? So the message is for the Muslims to please come out, practice politics, contest in elections. You might lose today, you will win tomorrow. Because this so-called monkey which was there on my shoulder of, oh no, if you participate in politics, communalism will get promoted. Thankfully, that monkey is off my back, because the 2019 parliament elections clearly tell us that the Hindu vote share of BJP is increased, not the Muslim vote. The Muslim vote is still the same. The BJP has got 37 more percent of Hindu votes, and that is why I feel it is high time that the Muslims realize that, because if you complain, when there are many Muslim youths who call me and complain about arresting, they call me and complain about not getting jobs, or discrimination. I tell them, what is the answer? The answer is this: you have to contest elections. You have to be politically active, because the real picture of our Indian democracy is that anyone who has political power, that leads to socio-economic development. You don't have political power, that is why you find yourself going down and down. Even the upward mobility is more in Dalits and Adivasis. For Muslims, it has come down. There's an empirical evidence. Why? Because you don't have a political voice. And the real reason is that I hope, I don't know whether it will happen in my lifetime, but the Muslims should come out of this slumber of RJD, Samajwadi Party, Congress, NCP, Telugu Desam. I know you are. It is nothing. They are just using Muslims for your votes. You are only good enough for an iftar party. But when it comes to the real crunch, what did Kejriwal do? So that is why I feel that the responsibility also lies with the Muslim community, that they must now be the masters of the destiny, and politically you win. You need not worry about this so-called BJP winning, because BJP is winning because of Hindu vote. BJP is not winning because Muslims not voting for the secular parties. The secular parties, the crass reality is they have lost the Hindu vote. So Muslims should realize that, okay, boss, please go ahead, contest election. Of course, I'm not saying you be against Hindus. Definitely, I have been trying in Maharashtra, in my state, of getting the Dalits, the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, for a common political platform should be made. But these are lessons I hope that the Muslim community takes, because empirical evidence is there of marginalization of Muslims. If the largest employer in India is the railways, you have only 4% Muslims, and within that 4%, 87% are in lower positions. The highest number of people who do self-employment are Muslims, 55%. And then you are told you are not allowed to sell vegetables in that housing society.
It's absolutely true that secular parties have let down Muslims and treated them just as vote banks. And absolutely, Muslims should participate with complete confidence in politics, and it's their constitutional right. But do you have some sense of what shape and language this political participation will take? How would you like Muslims to express themselves? Through a conservative Muslim identity? Or do you think that the battle will be for, equal participation in jobs, representation in parliament, and dignity? What will this new shape and language of Muslim politics be?
The language should be the constitutional language, simple as that. I'm a great admirer of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Ambedkar gave us the preamble, but Ambedkar also told us that, look, these are, equality, fraternity, justice is very important. But how do you get it? How do you attain that fraternity, justice, equality, liberty? Is by political participation. And unfortunately, This whole mess started in 1948 in Lucknow when our elders decided that we will not participate in politics. So the language has to be constitutional language. There's nothing wrong in that. The language also should be inclusive. There's nothing wrong in that. The language should also be for political empowerment, because you have political empowerment that leads to socio-economic justice. But here you have Muslims who are still stuck in this argument of, oh no, BJP will win, secularism will lose, it will lead to more polarization. These are arguments which are what we call expiry date. These are finished.
So tell me one thing, Owaisi Saab, the argument that people would throw back is that what has stopped the Muslim community from modernizing itself? Over the years, public largesse or government's employment has gone down. A community can also raise itself up into its own modern self. What has prohibited the Muslim community from doing that? I'll give you an example. Let's take the triple talaq issue. Why would even someone like you speak to protect the conservative aspect of Islam, which is not absolutely intrinsic to the Muslim identity? Why would you leave it for the BJP to do that, rather than either trigger that reform process within your own community, bring women more out in the forefront? This is the first time young Muslim women have come out. Otherwise, there's been so little of Muslim women voices. So, whether it's in terms of employment, whether it's in terms of modernity, whether it's in terms of churn within the Muslim community, what has stopped that process?
So, Madam, in your initial question, I had said that yes, the partially responsibility also lies with the Muslim community. But what has stopped all the governments from opening schools in where Muslim localities are there? Who stopped you? Did I come and say, don't open a school? If you go to a Muslim locality, I might sound very rhetorical to you. The first thing is a police station. Police stations are enough, either you have enough police stations, but I require schools. You don't open schools. Who's stopping you from open schools? When it comes to graduation, why is it that out of 100, only 3 Muslims get graduated? Who's stopping you? The government should have taken care of this. And IAS officers are only 3%, IPS 4%, IFS 2%. Every year you only find only 4% Muslims joining civil service. So these are questions which are related to the political empowerment of Muslims. Let me answer on triple talaq. Triple talaq is a social evil. I have personally condemned it. I still continue to condemn it. My question to an opposing of this particular legislation is, this will be used more now against Muslim women. So there's an empirical evidence that triple talaq is a social evil, but the way it was being blown out of proportion, that every Muslim man is going and giving triple talaq. That was not the issue.
But Owaisi Saab, here my counter question would be that, I've heard you say that, Tamils have fought for Jallikattu, so we should also be allowed triple talaq. It's our cultural custom. And, you've also said that homosexuals have been given their right to express themselves, and so we should also have our right. But I didn't really understand that argument, because homosexuals having their right to express themselves is a progression towards individual liberty and equal rights. The issue of triple talaq is not about equal rights and individual liberty. So, it's an outdated cultural custom. And even in Hindu law, like a lot of personal laws, whether it was on widow remarriage, dowry, property rights, child marriage, the reform has had to come through legislation. It's not just that the reform has come from a community reforming itself. So why look at this as an assault on Muslim identity when triple talaq is not intrinsic to the religious identity of Muslims?
The first point which I want to make is that, as far as your question about homosexuality, my argument was, it is no more. There is no criminal penal provision to it, right? Here you have triple talaq. You are giving me a 3-year sentence. That was my argument. Second point is that you talk about child marriage. There is 2011 census says that 1 crore of child marriages took place in India. 80% belong to the Hindu community. My argument is that social evils cannot be eradicated only through legislation. Fourth point is that you are giving a 3-year sentence through under triple talaq legislation, and you're also saying that the marriage is not dissolved. Why should the woman be stuck in that marriage if that buffoon has no sanctity for that marriage? If the court convicts him, the legislature is saying that being in jail, you should provide her sustenance, and then when he comes out after 1 year or 3 years, the wife should stand there. But what kind of legislation is this? So
yes, but Owaisi Saab, in all fairness, I totally agree with you about the illogical nature of the way it has been criminalized. But opposition to that would have met with a much more positive response than the articulation of you and others, even liberals, who positioned this and abolishing of triple talaq as an assault on Muslim identity. Of course, every culture has conservative elements in it, and you can't legislate away all of that. But those who want to fight conservatism in their own culture should have access to a law, like women who suffer from dowry or who have, any kind of oppression. The law exists to access it. I'm not saying it eradicates it, but why would you oppose that as being an assault on Muslim identity?
I don't know whether you have read the complete judgment of triple talaq, Supreme Court Constitutional Bench, wherein the Modi government told the Supreme Court, just finish off all divorce laws or Muslim divorce laws. When the Honorable Supreme Court judge, the then judge who was there, asked him, then what will happen to all those marriages? He said, don't worry, we'll make a new law. So triple talaq legislation is a first step in ensuring that whatever legal protections are there to Muslims under Muslim Marriage Act are taken away. It is incumbent on me as a Muslim to ensure that this social evil is not practiced. But let us be realistic. You're making laws. How will it be implemented? That is why I keep on repeating the social evils. Reform should come from the community. The courts and the government should not interfere in personal laws.
But there, Owaisi Saab, again, I would push back as someone with a strong track record of being a liberal and being anti-communal. But I'm trying to open up doors where some self-introspection can happen. That why would the positioning for the Muslim community not be that you spell out what is illogical, what is not going to serve the Muslim community, but the articulation of it was that, you want to abolish triple talaq, that is an oppression on Muslims, So you're not participating in a productive way. And so I'm going to now shift to, you have said today that you see it as an evil, you see it as something to be eradicated. The method through which it's been done, you think is faulty. But in terms of just having laws, I would put to you that the Hindu community has also had to submit to a lot of legislation which elders in the community would not have allowed. They would not have allowed so many things that, let's even take homosexuality. There are many Hindu elders and so-called leaders of the community who would not have allowed for it. But the court stepped in and said, this is a principle of equality and justice and individual liberty, which is the cornerstone of the Constitution, and it has been legislated. I've already mentioned about Dowry and Property Act and widow remarriage and child marriage. Of course, it continues to happen. But the Hindu community has been forced to admit and have it legislated that this is no longer acceptable practice. Let's put it that way. If it continues to happen, it's a violation.
I still hold view that social evils cannot be eradicated through legislations. I still hold the view that when it comes to religious matters, the court should not become priests. They should be jurists and judges. This is my opinion. I respect your opinion, but this is my opinion. I differ with you on your opinion.
So an additional question on this whole issue is the Uniform Civil Code, which is obviously a very contentious issue. And, just before COVID hit, one heard that this was going to be next on the cultural agenda of the BJP. And, their argument is that this is a directive principle of the Constitution. So again, I'd like to ask you, Owaisi Saab, that are you fundamentally opposed to this as a bad idea? Or are you worried about how it will be designed under a Hindu majoritarian government and, what will its intent be? So what is your position on the Uniform Civil Code?
I am a firm opponent of Uniform Civil Code. Why? Because I believe that the diversity of India would be finished the day the steps are being taken to have a Uniform Civil Code. Baba Sahib Ambedkar was, if he knew that this would have helped, he would have created a Uniform Civil Code. He left it. So it's a directive principle. Why is it that we are so focused on Uniform Civil Code? Why are we not focused on the fundamental rights which are given to each and every Indian? That is being denied to everyone. Freedom of expression, freedom of life. My life is being taken. I cannot express myself. My liberty is being taken away. There should be more focus on realizing the fundamental rights being given to the Indians, especially groups like Muslims, Dalits, disadvantaged groups like Muslims. Take the example of how migrant laborers. Take the example of what about their migrant laborers. Dignity is part of our constitution. Their dignity. Where was the dignity? Dignity is part of our constitution. Migrant laborers died in 85 migrant laborers died in birth. A migrant woman gives birth. A migrant woman died. So that is what I'm saying. And then there has to be people died. So that is what I'm saying. Realization there has to be take the example of people being thrown into prisons for years and years for no reason whatsoever. Take the example of the separation of powers, which are again part of our basic structure of constitution. All those lines are being thrown away to the wind. So the executive is getting powerful and powerful. That is main threat to our country. Having Uniform Civil Code is not, it is not the need of the hour. The need of the hour is, please ensure that your fundamental rights are protected. And I am of the opinion that Uniform Civil Code is not required for India, because let us celebrate our diversity. Social evils are there. Let us work on it. Let us ensure that those social evils are eradicated through communities' participation.
Before we move to other issues, Owaisi Saab, something interesting occurred to me that both Subramaniam Swamy and you are very articulate voices for your communities. And yet, interestingly, Swamy has told me that he never goes to a temple, and his family is like the perfect symbol of India's plurality, because he has Muslims, Hindu, Parsi, Buddhist, everyone within his family. And your own brother is married to a Christian woman. So both of you don't really inhabit the conservative end of your communities, and yet you both seem to speak for the most conservative elements of your societies. So why is that?
No, I mean, this is whole discussion which I had with you. Where is conservatism? The majority of points which I made was on constitution, constitutional rights, political empowerment. I know Muslim activism. What I dislike that, everything has to be from a conservative point of view. And I don't know what a conservative Muslim is. Having a beard and wearing a sherwani is conservative.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So it is wrong to say. And believe me that things have changed within the Muslim community as well, because Muslims have realized that if you are a vocal Muslim, that is too much for any political party to accommodate you. And that is why you see this vocalism, this coming out and asking for the constitutional rights. That is where people should really put their finger and start to understand what exactly are Muslims aiming for, what Muslims are want. But comparing me with Mr. Subramanian Swamy in terms of his academic achievement, I am nothing. Mr. Swamy he holds a particular ideology. And I am of the opinion that I have told him many times on a TV debate and in person that, sir, your talent is not being used by your party, and you should change your political party and your ideology. This sort of exchanges I have with Swamy. But what Swamy represents is completely different from what Swamy believes in Hindu Rashtra. I don't believe in Hindu Rashtra. I don't believe in any religious supremacy in India. I firmly believe in the pluralism, diversity of India, which unfortunately Mr. Swamy does not believe as of now. 25 years ago, he used to believe in that ideology.
So let's shift to the CA protests, Owaisi Saab. This was a very significant development, and for many people in India, it was a very reaffirming thing to see so many young people coming out on the streets in support of constitutional values. And there were two positive things that happened with the protests. One was that by and large the protests were peaceful, and the second was that one saw many young Muslim women coming out on the streets, and this was really a first in India, and I think would have triggered a lot of churn within the Muslim community. It wasn't just young Muslim women. One also saw housewives and other women who wouldn't have ever come out on a public platform, who were all coming out to get their voice heard. So, I feel that people haven't really focused on this aspect, that what churn has this created within the community, and were there changes that were happening below the surface that has now expressed itself? And, how will this participation of women in these protests impact not just India, but the Muslim community itself?
I completely agree with all your points. I'll just add on what you said is that there was this impression, there was this false impression and false belief that Muslim women are being suppressed and they don't come out, they hide behind their hijab or the niqab. That is not the case. Unfortunately, no one had really had seen what Muslims development is happening. Because when I tell all these things to my friends, my political friends or different political parties in Delhi, I said, boss, you should come to my city and see that you have a Muslim girls riding Royal Enfield, motorbikes. You have, and that too wearing an hijab. You have Muslim women who are surgeons, who are engineers, who are civil engineers. So there has always been a development, but unfortunately, people didn't want to see this development. They were still stuck in that stereotype image of what was shown on to them. But this protest was an eye-opener to everyone. That was a reflection of what was happening and how the Muslim society reacted and was behaving. And let me also tell you that, inshallah, when our country will be, hopefully, inshallah, we'll come back to normalcy when this whole COVID virus goes away by the grace of Almighty. Believe me, again the protest will start. My whole message to all those Muslim women and to those young boys was, please take it to a political direction. You are protesting against CAA, NPR, NRC, fantastic. But lead this to a political empowerment, because this is a great moment in your lives wherein you should take it to a logical conclusion of political empowerment. If that happens, and I hope it happens, then things would definitely change for good, for our democracy, for our Muslim community. In fact, I would say even secularism would be strengthened, because if you have voices reflecting the minority community, that is fantastic for our democracy.
The question I'd like to ask you is that, do you make a distinction between Hinduism and Hindutva? There's been this discussion that the real war today is not even between, Hindus and Muslims, it's between Hindus and Hindutva. Do you make that distinction?
I am of the opinion, I've said this many times, I reiterate again to you, that I have never been against, and inshallah I will never be against Hindu. I am against Hindutva, I will be against Hindutva. As far as what the majority Hindu community is doing, I want them to get out of this what I call this jadoo of Mr. Modi, that what he's doing to the whole country, please come out of it. Look at what is happening, how radicalized BJP is making the majority community. What kind of language that is being used, against any minority or anyone who disagrees. So that is why I feel that it is the responsibility of the majority of the Hindu brethren that they should come out and save the soul of this country. The soul of this country is its pluralism, it's its diversity. That is what it needs to be protected. And what we are seeing in US, it makes me happy and it makes me sad also. For George, every majority community of US is out on the streets asking for justice. You might find Shoma Chaudhury arguing for equality and also opposing Asaduddin Owaisi for his politics. I respect that. But how many Shoma Chaudhurys are out there? Please tell me. I don't find that. that is what makes me very apprehensive, that when the BJP vote share increases, BJP is winning not because of Muslim vote, BJP is winning because of their increase of the Hindu vote. This is the problem which everyone has to address. And yes, nationalism. I feel that this country requires a patriot, because when you become a nationalist, you get blinded by the supreme leader. You feel everything is right. If he says thali bajao, you do thali bajao. If he says close lights, you close lights. If he says come out on your balconies and start clapping, you start clap. Not realizing that that is not the way to stop COVID, which is now killing every Indian now. In short, Indian nationalism is inclusive. Hindu nationalism, where Mr. Modi says I'm a Hindu nationalist, that is very exclusive. I am a firm believer of Indian nationalism. Indian nationalism is important because that will allow me to question the Prime Minister of the day. The moment you believe in Hindu nationalism, then you believe that, oh, the Prime Minister is a god. He cannot be questioned. And everyone has to fall on his feet and bow to him, bow to his wishes. That cannot be the case with me. And that is why I say Indian nationalism is what our forefathers fought for against the Britishers, because they wanted all of us to become an Indian nationalist, to be inclusive rather than being exclusive.